Chapter 1 The Onion Challenge begins. The kitchen was a sanctuary of warmth and laughter, the kind of place where the outside world faded into a distant hum. Last week, they had gathered here for a different reason. A celebration of friendship, a toast to the new beginnings that life had to offer. Brad had brought a bottle of wine, and Mary Kate had baked a cake that was more frosting than sponge. They had shared stories, dreams, and secrets, the kind that lingered in the air long after the last slice of cake had been devoured. But tonight, the atmosphere was charged with a different kind of energy, one that hinted at both excitement and trepidation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue through the kitchen window, Brad stood at the counter, his hands deftly chopping vegetables. The rhythmic sound of the knife against the cutting board was a comforting backdrop to the chatter that filled the room. Mary Kate, with her vibrant red hair pulled back in a messy bun, was rummaging through the pantry, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Liv, the quiet observer of the group, leaned against the counter, her arms crossed, a smile playing on her lips as she watched her friends. "Okay, everyone, gather around," Brad called, his voice booming with enthusiasm. "Tonight's challenge is to make the best vegetable soup, but there's a twist." He paused for dramatic effect, his eyes glinting with mischief. "The centerpiece of our soup is this bad boy." He held up a large, intimidating onion, its papery skin glistening under the kitchen lights. Caitlin, who had been stirring a pot of simmering broth, raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding, right? An onion. What's so challenging about that?" "Ah, but it is not just any onion," Brad replied, his tone conspiratorial. "This onion is known for its emotional properties. Legend has it that whoever can chop it without shedding a tear will be crowned the ultimate chef of the night." Ashley, ever the skeptic, rolled her eyes. "You're just trying to get us to cry over our cooking. What's next, a crying contest? Come on, it'll be fun." Paige chimed in, her enthusiasm infectious. "We can make it a competition. Whoever cries first has to do the dishes." The group erupted into laughter, the tension of the evening dissipating like steam from a boiling pot. But beneath the surface, a current of unease began to weave its way through the group. Each friend had their own reasons for being there, and as they gathered around the counter, the air thickened with unspoken words and hidden emotions. "All right, let's get started." Brad clapped his hands together, breaking the momentary silence. "We'll each take turns chopping the onion. Who wants to go first?" "I'll do it," Liv volunteered, stepping forward with a determined look on her face. She had always been the quiet one, the observer, but tonight she seemed ready to break free from her shell. As she took the onion from Brad's hands, a flicker of apprehension crossed her features. "Just remember to breathe," Mary Kate advised, her voice light but laced with sincerity. "And don't forget to keep your eyes on the prize, delicious soup." Liv nodded, her grip tightening around the onion. She positioned it on the cutting board, her heart racing in anticipation. The others watched in silence, their expressions a mix of encouragement and curiosity. As she sliced into the onion, the sharp scent filled the air, a pungent reminder of the challenge ahead. At first, Liv seemed unfazed, her focus unwavering as she chopped with precision. But as the layers of the onion fell away, the tears began to well in her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to stave off the inevitable, but it was no use. A single tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. "First one out," Caitlin exclaimed, her laughter ringing through the kitchen. "Looks like you're doing the dishes, Liv." Liv chuckled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay, I admit defeat." But I'm not doing the dishes. As she stepped aside, the others cheered her on, their spirits lifted by the lightheartedness of the moment. Brad took his turn next, his confidence radiating as he picked up the knife. "Watch and learn, ladies," he said with a wink, his bravado masking the flutter of nerves in his stomach. He began to chop, the knife gliding through the onion with practiced ease. But as the scent intensified, he felt the familiar sting in his eyes. He fought against it, determined to prove himself, but soon enough, he too succumbed to the onion's power. A tear slipped down his cheek, and he let out a frustrated laugh. Okay, I'm out. Looks like we're all going to be doing dishes tonight," Ashley teased, stepping forward with a playful smirk. "Let me show you how it is done." As she took her turn, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter faded, replaced by a palpable tension that hung in the air. Each friend was acutely aware of the stakes, not just of the cooking challenge but of the deeper emotions simmering beneath the surface. They were all there for a reason, and as the onion layers were peeled away, so too were the layers of their own guarded hearts. Ashley chopped with determination, her brow furrowed in concentration. But as the onion's essence enveloped her, she felt the familiar weight of her own insecurities. Memories of past failures and unfulfilled dreams flooded her mind, and before she knew it, tears streamed down her face. "I can't believe this is happening," she exclaimed, half laughing, half sobbing. "I'm not even that emotional." "Welcome to the club," Mary Kate chimed in, her voice laced with empathy. "It's just an onion, but it knows how to hit us where it hurts." As the challenge continued, each friend took their turn, the kitchen echoing with laughter and tears. Caitlin, the ever-optimistic one, managed to chop without shedding a tear, her triumph celebrated with cheers and high fives. But as the night wore on, the mood shifted. The laughter became tinged with something deeper, a longing for connection that lay just beneath the surface. Paige, who had been quiet for most of the evening, finally stepped up to the cutting board. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up the knife. "I'm ready," she declared, though her voice wavered. As she began to chop, the others watched in silence, sensing the weight of her unspoken thoughts. With each slice, Paige's expression shifted from determination to vulnerability. The tears began to flow, and she didn't try to hide them. "I thought I could handle this," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But it is harder than I thought." "Hey, it is okay," Liv said softly, stepping closer. "We're all in this together. You don't have to pretend to be strong." Chapter 2 Brad takes the first slice. Brad stood at the cutting board, a confident grin plastered across his face. He was the self-proclaimed chef of the group, always eager to take the lead in the kitchen. The knife felt comfortable in his hand, its weight familiar as he positioned the onion before him. "All right, everyone, gather round. The first slice is mine," he declared, his voice booming with enthusiasm. Mary Kate leaned against the counter, her arms crossed, a teasing smile dancing on her lips. "Just don't cry all over the soup, Brad. We don't need extra seasoning tonight." "Ha, I've got this," he shot back, his bravado unwavering. He glanced at the others. Liv, Ashley, Caitlin, and Paige, who were all watching with a mix of anticipation and concern. The kitchen was a cozy haven, but the tension was palpable, a silent agreement that the onion was more than just a vegetable tonight. With a swift motion, Brad brought the knife down, slicing through the onion with ease. The crisp sound echoed in the room, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But then, As the pungent aroma wafted through the air, a sharp sting invaded his eyes. He blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the sensation, but it was too late. Tears began to well up, blurring his vision. Brad. Liv's voice broke through the haze, laced with concern. Are you okay? He nodded, but the tears betrayed him, spilling over and cascading down his cheeks. I'm fine. Just really into this onion, he managed to choke out, his bravado slipping as the tears pooled on the cutting board, creating a small puddle that glistened under the kitchen lights. The laughter that had filled the room faded into a stunned silence. The others exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from amusement to shock. Caitlin stepped closer, her brow furrowed. Brad, seriously, are you all right? I said I'm fine. He snapped, the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming, each drop a testament to the overwhelming emotions he had kept bottled up for too long. Ashley, always the peacemaker, stepped forward, her voice softening. Maybe we should take a break. It's just an onion, after all. No. Brad's voice was sharper than he intended, and he felt the heat of embarrassment creep up his neck. I can do this. I want to do this. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. The kitchen felt stifling, the laughter of his friends now a distant memory. He was determined to push through, to prove that he could handle the task at hand. All right, then, Paige said, her tone encouraging. Just take your time, we're all here for you. He nodded, grateful for her support, but the pressure felt immense. The tears continued to flow, each one a reminder of the weight he carried inside. He could feel the eyes of his friends on him, their concern palpable, and it only made him feel more exposed. As he resumed slicing, the onion seemed to mock him, its layers peeling away just as he felt his own defenses crumbling. The pungent smell filled the air, mingling with the scent of garlic and herbs simmering on the stove. It was a sensory overload, and he struggled to focus, the tears blurring his vision and clouding his thoughts. Hey, Brad, Liv said, her voice gentle, you know it is okay to cry, right? It's just an onion, but if it is bringing up something else, you can talk to us. He paused, the knife hovering above the cutting board. The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy blanket. Did they really want to know? Did he want to share? The thought of opening up felt terrifying, yet liberating at the same time. He could feel the walls he had built around his emotions beginning to crack. He started, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect it to hit me like this. It's just an onion, but it feels like everything. He took a shaky breath, the tears still flowing. I've been feeling so overwhelmed lately, and I thought cooking would help, but now it just feels like I'm drowning. The room fell silent, the only sound the soft bubbling of the soup on the stove. Each friend exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from shock to understanding. Mary-Kate stepped forward, her eyes softening. Brad, we're here for you. You don't have to go through this alone. He looked up, meeting her gaze, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. I know, but it is hard. I don't want to burden you guys with my problems. Burden, Ashley echoed, her voice firm. We're friends, Brad. That's what we're here for. To share the good and the bad. You don't have to pretend with us. The sincerity in her voice struck a chord deep within him. He felt the weight of his emotions shift, the tears still flowing but now mingled with a sense of release. I feel like I'm always trying to keep it together, you know. Like I have to be the strong one. But sometimes, it is just too much. Caitlin stepped closer, her hand resting on his shoulder. You don't have to be strong all the time. It's okay to let go. We all have our moments. Brad took a deep breath, the warmth of their support wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. I guess I just didn't want to let anyone down. I thought if I showed weakness, it would change how you all see me. Brad, Liv said, her voice steady, we see you as you are. Not as some perfect version of yourself. We're your friends, and we care about you. That's what matters. He nodded, the tears still flowing but now feeling lighter, as if each drop was washing away a piece of the burden he had carried for so long. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Now, how about we finish this soup together? Paige suggested, her tone brightening the mood. We can't let an onion defeat us, right? With a small smile breaking through the tears, Brad nodded. Right. Chapter 3. Mary-Kate's turn now. As the laughter faded into a nervous silence, Mary-Kate felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over tensions and brought lightness to heavy hearts. But tonight, the stakes felt higher. The onion loomed before her, a monstrous challenge that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. She glanced at Brad, still sniffling, his eyes red and watery, and felt a surge of determination. If he could face this, so could she. Okay, she said, her voice steady despite the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Let me give it a try. The others exchanged glances, a mix of encouragement and apprehension. Liv leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her brow furrowed in concern. You sure about this, Mary-Kate? It's not just the cutting. It is the aftermath. Mary-Kate nodded, her heart racing. I can handle it. Just keep the tissues handy. She stepped up to the cutting board, the knife glinting under the warm kitchen lights. The onion sat there, its papery skin glistening, almost mocking her. With a deep breath, she picked up the knife, her fingers trembling slightly. The first slice was smooth, the blade gliding through the onion's flesh. The pungent aroma wafted up, sharp and biting, and she felt her eyes begin to sting almost immediately. She blinked rapidly, trying to stave off the inevitable, but it was no use. Tears spilled over, hot and unwelcome, cascading down her cheeks. She could hear the collective gasp from her friends, the sound echoing in the suddenly tense atmosphere. Oh no, not you too! Ashley exclaimed, her voice a mix of sympathy and laughter. Mary-Kate chuckled through her tears, the absurdity of the situation breaking through the haze of her emotions. I guess I'm just as weak as Brad, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Who knew onions could bring out such vulnerability? As she continued to chop, the tears flowed freely, pooling on the cutting board and mingling with the onion's juices. The laughter faded, replaced by a palpable tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud. The kitchen, once filled with the sounds of clattering pots and playful banter, now felt heavy with the weight of their shared experience. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, Caitlin said, her voice laced with urgency. We can't let this onion defeat us. We're stronger than this. Stronger than an onion, Paige quipped, trying to lighten the mood, but her smile faltered as she wiped her own eyes. I don't know, it is putting up a good fight. Mary-Kate paused, her knife hovering above the onion. She could feel the warmth of her friends' gazes on her, a mix of admiration and concern. Maybe it is not just the onion, she said softly, her voice trembling. Maybe it is everything else. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. She could see the flicker of understanding in their eyes, the acknowledgement that this cooking night was about more than just soup. It was about friendship, vulnerability, and the unspoken fears that lay beneath their laughter. Brad stepped forward, his expression earnest. "Mary-Kate, it is okay to feel overwhelmed. We're all here for each other, right? It's not just about the onion. It is about us." His words struck a chord deep within her. She felt a swell of gratitude for her friends, for the way they had rallied around her and Brad, even in the face of something as silly as an onion. "You're right," she said, her voice steadier now. "We're in this together." With renewed determination, she resumed chopping, her tears mingling with the onion's juices, creating a strange concoction of emotion and flavor. The others watched in silence, their expressions a mix of admiration and empathy. As the last piece fell away, Mary-Kate wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a smile breaking through the tears. "There, I did it," she declared, her voice triumphant. The group erupted into cheers, the tension dissipating like steam from a boiling pot. "You're a hero, Mary-Kate," Liv exclaimed, rushing forward to give her a quick hug. "We knew you could do it." "Yeah, and now we have enough tears for a whole soup," Caitlin added, laughter bubbling up once more. Mary-Kate laughed, the sound bright and clear, a welcome relief from the heaviness of the moment. "Let's just hope it doesn't add too much flavor," she joked, wiping her hands on a towel. But as the laughter faded, Mary-Kate felt a flicker of something deeper within her. The tears had been cathartic, a release of pent-up emotions she hadn't fully acknowledged. She glanced around the kitchen, her friends' faces illuminated by the warm glow of the overhead lights, and felt a surge of love and connection. Yet, beneath that warmth, a shadow lingered. There were things left unsaid, feelings unaddressed. She could sense it in the way Liv's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, in the way Brad's laughter was tinged with something more serious. "Okay, soup's almost ready," Ashley said, breaking the momentary silence. "Let's get this pot on the stove and see what we've created." As they gathered around the stove, stirring the bubbling mixture, Mary-Kate's mind raced. She wanted to address the unspoken tension, to dig deeper into the emotions that had surfaced during their cooking escapade. But how could she bring it up without ruining the light-hearted atmosphere they had fought so hard to reclaim? "Hey, can we talk about something?" she ventured, her voice tentative. The others paused, their expressions shifting from playful to serious. "Sure, what's up?" Brad asked, leaning against the counter, his gaze steady. Mary-Kate took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I know we've all been feeling a bit off lately. I mean, tonight was supposed to be fun, but it turned into something more, didn't it?" Liv nodded slowly, her brow furrowing. "Yeah, I felt that too. It's like the onion peeled back layers we didn't even notice." Chapter 4 Liv's attempt. Liv stood at the edge of the kitchen, her heart racing as she watched her friends grapple with the onion's cruel effects. The laughter that had filled the air moments ago had been replaced by a heavy silence, punctuated only by the sound of sobs and the occasional sniffle. She felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. If she could just slice through the onion without succumbing to its powers, perhaps she could restore some semblance of normalcy to their cooking night. "Liv, you've got this," Ashley encouraged, her voice slightly muffled as she dabbed at her own tear-streaked cheeks. "Just think of it as a challenge. You're the strongest among us." Liv forced a smile, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. She had always been the one to take charge, the one who could handle any situation. But this was different. The onion loomed large on the cutting board, its layers glistening under the warm kitchen lights, a silent adversary waiting to unleash its wrath. She took a deep breath, inhaling the sharp, pungent aroma that filled the air, and stepped forward. "Okay, here goes nothing," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The others watched with a mix of hope and apprehension as she picked up the knife, its cool handle grounding her in the moment. As she brought the blade down, the first slice cut through the onion with a satisfying crunch. The sound echoed in the kitchen, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil swirling around them. But as the onion's juices released, the familiar sting invaded her eyes, and she felt the first tears welling up. "No, no, not me," she whispered, gritting her teeth. She focused on the task at hand, determined to push through. But with each slice, the tears flowed freely, her sobs echoing in the small space. The puddle beneath her feet transformed into a small lake, reflecting the chaos of their cooking night. "Liv," Caitlin exclaimed, her voice laced with concern. "You're doing great, but maybe we should." "No," Liv interrupted, her voice rising above the sound of her sobs. "I can do this. I have to do this." She sliced again, the onion yielding to her efforts, but the tears only intensified. It was as if the onion was a portal, releasing not just its own essence but also the bottled-up emotions of the entire group. The friends exchanged worried glances, the realization dawning on them that they were all caught in this emotional whirlwind together. The laughter had faded, replaced by a shared vulnerability that hung in the air like the pungent aroma of the onion. "Liv, please stop," Ashley said, stepping closer, her eyes wide with concern. "We need a new plan. This isn't working." Liv paused, the knife hovering above the cutting board. She looked around at her friends, their faces streaked with tears, their expressions a mix of empathy and desperation. The weight of the moment settled heavily on her shoulders. She had wanted to be the hero, to save the day, but instead, she felt like she was drowning in a sea of tears. "Maybe we should just take a break," Mary Kate suggested softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can regroup and figure out a different way to tackle this." Liv nodded slowly, the knife slipping from her fingers and clattering onto the cutting board. She stepped back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, feeling the warmth of her friends' support enveloping her. "You're right. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I could handle it." "It's not your fault," Caitlin reassured her, stepping forward to give Liv a comforting hug. "We're all in this together. We just need to think outside the box." As they huddled together, the tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of camaraderie that had been missing. They were a team, and together they could find a solution. "What if we try a different approach?" Paige suggested, her eyes lighting up with an idea. "What if we cook something else? Something that doesn't involve onions?" The group murmured in agreement, the prospect of a new dish igniting a spark of excitement. Liv felt a wave of relief wash over her. The pressure to conquer the onion had been lifted, and she could finally breathe again. "Okay, what do we want to make?" Brad asked, his voice regaining its usual enthusiasm. "How about a pasta dish? We can make a creamy Alfredo or a fresh tomato sauce." "Tomato sauce sounds perfect," Ashley chimed in, her spirits lifting. "We can use fresh basil and garlic. No onions in sight." The group rallied around the idea, their laughter returning as they began to gather ingredients. Liv felt a renewed sense of purpose as she chopped tomatoes, the vibrant red flesh glistening under the kitchen lights. The air was filled with the sweet scent of basil and the rich aroma of garlic sizzling in olive oil. As they worked together, The atmosphere shifted from one of tension to one of joy. They shared stories, laughter, and playful banter, the earlier tears forgotten in the warmth of their friendship. Liv felt a sense of belonging that filled her heart, reminding her of why these moments mattered. "Liv, you're the best," Caitlin said, handing her a handful of fresh basil. "You always know how to bring us together." Liv smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't do it without all of you. We're a team, remember?" As they stirred the sauce, the kitchen filled with the sounds of bubbling pots and sizzling pans, a comforting backdrop to their laughter. The earlier chaos faded into a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of friendship and the promise of a delicious meal. But as they sat down to enjoy their creation, Liv couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lingering beneath the surface. The onion had been a catalyst, a reminder of their vulnerabilities, and she wondered if they had truly moved past it or if it would resurface in a different form. "Hey, can we talk about what happened earlier?" Brad asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled over the table. "I mean, that was intense." The group exchanged glances, the light-hearted atmosphere shifting once more. Liv felt a knot form in her stomach. She had hoped to leave the tears behind, but it seemed they were not done with the onion just yet. "Yeah, it was," Mary-Kate admitted, her voice quiet. Chapter 5 Ashley joins the fray. Ashley stood at the edge of the kitchen, her heart racing as she watched her friends struggle. The sight of them, each one a victim of the onion's cruel sting, tugged at her heartstrings. She had always been the one to lighten the mood, the jokester of the group, and she felt a familiar urge to step in and diffuse the tension. But as she took a step forward, the laughter that bubbled up inside her quickly turned into a lump in her throat. Okay, everyone. Let's not drown in our own tears," she called out, her voice a mix of humor and desperation. "I mean, who knew chopping an onion could turn into a waterworks competition?" Her attempt at levity was met with a chorus of half-hearted chuckles, but the laughter quickly faded as the reality of their situation set in. The kitchen was now half filled with tears, the puddle reflecting the warm glow of the overhead lights, creating a surreal atmosphere. "Maybe we should just order takeout," Caitlin suggested, her voice shaky as she glanced down at the growing lake beneath her feet. "I don't think we're cut out for this." "No way," Brad exclaimed, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, determination flickering in his gaze. "We can't let an onion defeat us. We've come too far." "Yeah, but we're literally drowning here," Liv chimed in, her voice rising in panic. "What if we can't stop crying? What if we just keep crying forever?" Ashley felt a pang of anxiety at Liv's words. The thought of being trapped in this emotional whirlpool was terrifying. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "All right, let's regroup," she said, her voice firm. "We need a new strategy. How about we all take a step back and let me handle this?" "Are you sure?" Mary-Kate asked, her eyes still glistening with unshed tears. "I mean, you saw what happened to all of us. I've got this," Ashley replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just watch and learn." With a newfound resolve, she approached the cutting board, the onion looming large and ominous before her. She picked up the knife, feeling its cool weight in her hand, and took a deep breath, steeling herself for the inevitable. The others watched with a mix of hope and skepticism, their expressions a blend of admiration and fear. As she made the first cut, the sharp scent of the onion filled the air, and she felt a familiar sting in her eyes. "Oh no, not me too," she exclaimed, trying to maintain her composure. "I'm supposed to be the funny one." But the laughter that followed was tinged with desperation. The tears began to flow, hot and unbidden, and soon she was standing in the shallow pool of their collective sorrow, her friend's eyes wide with disbelief. "See, it's contagious," she said, her voice breaking as she wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "This is ridiculous. Maybe we should just embrace it," Caitlin suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, we're already knee-deep in tears. Why not just let it all out?" Ashley paused, the knife hovering above the onion. The idea resonated with her. Maybe they didn't need to fight the tears. Maybe they needed to acknowledge them. "You know what? You're right," she said, her voice steadier now. "Let's just let it all out. We're in this together, right?" The others nodded, their expressions softening as they realized the truth in her words. They were a team, bound together by their shared experiences, their laughter, and yes, even their tears. "All right, let's do this," Brad shouted, raising his hands in a mock cheer. "Tears for the soup." With that, the tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. They all took a deep breath, and as Ashley resumed cutting the onion, the tears flowed freely, but this time, they were accompanied by laughter. Who knew cooking could be such an emotional roller coaster? Liv said, her laughter ringing out like a bell. "I think we've discovered a new form of therapy," Mary Kate added, wiping her eyes with a kitchen towel. As they continued to chop, the kitchen filled with a mix of laughter and sobs, the sound echoing off the walls like a strange, beautiful melody. The puddle beneath them grew larger, but instead of panic, there was a sense of release, a catharsis that came from sharing their vulnerabilities. "Okay, but seriously, how are we going to explain this to anyone who walks in?" Caitlin asked, her laughter bubbling over. "I can just imagine the look on my mom's face. Just tell her we're making a new kind of soup." "Tears of friendship," Ashley quipped, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Perfect. I'll add it to my recipe book," Brad chimed in, grinning widely. As the laughter continued to flow, Ashley felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This was what friendship was about. Embracing the chaos, the messiness of life, and finding joy even in the tears. But just as the atmosphere began to lighten, a sudden knock at the door shattered their moment of levity. The sound echoed through the kitchen, and the friends exchanged startled glances. "Who could that be?" Liv asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I don't know, but we can't let them see us like this," Mary Kate exclaimed, glancing down at the puddle of tears. "Quick, everyone, hide," Ashley shouted, her heart racing as she glanced around the room. In a flurry of movement, they scrambled to wipe their faces and clear the floor, but it was too late. The door swung open, and in walked Paige, her eyes widening in shock at the sight before her. "What on earth happened here?" she gasped, taking in the scene. The puddle of tears, the tear-streaked faces, and the half-chopped onion lying on the cutting board. Ashley opened her mouth to explain, but the words caught in her throat. Chapter 6 Caitlin's desperation. Caitlin stood at the edge of the chaos, her heart racing. She could feel the weight of her friend's despair pressing down on her, a tangible force that threatened to pull her under. The puddle of tears at her feet shimmered under the warm kitchen lights, a surreal reflection of their collective struggle. She took a deep breath, the scent of onions mingling with the salty air, and stepped forward, determined to save the day. "Okay, guys, I'll give it a try," Caitlin said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. She picked up the knife, its cool handle grounding her in the moment. The others looked at her with a mix of hope and desperation, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Be careful, Caitlin," Liv warned, her voice trembling. "We're not sure how much more we can take." Caitlin nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of their expectations, the unspoken pressure to break the cycle of tears. As she approached the onion, she could almost hear it mocking her, its layers waiting to unleash a torrent of emotions. She steadied her breath, focusing on the task at hand. With a swift motion, she sliced through the onion, the blade gliding effortlessly through its flesh. The sharp, pungent scent filled the air, and within moments, she felt the familiar sting in her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to fight back the tears, but it was a losing battle. They spilled over, mingling with the tears of her friends, creating a swirling vortex of emotion that seemed to rise from the floor like a tide. "Caitlin," Ashley cried, her voice laced with panic. "It's getting worse." Caitlin's heart sank as she glanced down at the growing puddle, now a mini ocean of tears. The realization hit her like a wave crashing against the shore. They were in deeper trouble than they had thought. The laughter that had once filled the kitchen was now replaced by a chorus of sobs, each friend caught in their own emotional storm. "I can't do this," Caitlin exclaimed, dropping the knife onto the cutting board with a clatter. "I thought I could help, but it is just making everything worse." "Maybe we need to take a break," Mary Kate suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't keep going like this." "But we can't just give up," Brad interjected, his frustration evident. "We need to finish the soup. We can't let an onion defeat us." "Maybe it is not just the onion," Liv murmured, her gaze distant. "Maybe it is everything else we're feeling." Caitlin felt a pang of recognition at Liv's words. It wasn't just the onion that was causing their tears. It was the weight of their lives, the pressures they faced, and the unspoken fears that loomed over them like dark clouds. She could feel her own emotions bubbling to the surface, threatening to spill over. "Guys, I think we need to talk," Caitlin said, her voice trembling. "About everything." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Each friend exchanged glances, the weight of Caitlin's words hanging in the air like a fragile thread. Finally, Ashley broke the silence, her voice soft. "You mean about our lives? What's really going on?" Caitlin nodded, her heart racing. "Yeah, I think we're all feeling a lot more than just the pressure of this stupid onion. We're all struggling in our own ways." Mary Kate stepped forward, her eyes glistening. "I've been feeling so lost lately. It's like I'm stuck in this rut, and I don't know how to get out." "I thought it was just me," Liv admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been feeling overwhelmed with school and everything else. It's like I can't catch a break." Caitlin felt a rush of relief wash over her. They were finally opening up, sharing the burdens they had been carrying alone. "I've been feeling the same way," she confessed. "I thought I was the only one struggling with everything. My parents are fighting all the time, and I feel like I'm stuck in the middle." Brad's expression softened, and he stepped closer. "I didn't know you were going through that, Caitlin. I've been dealing with my own stuff too. My job is stressing me out, and I feel like I'm drowning." The tears that had once felt like a burden now seemed to connect them, a shared experience that brought them closer together. Caitlin looked around the room, her heart swelling with gratitude for her friends. They were all in this together, navigating the storm of life side by side. "I think we need to support each other," Caitlin said, her voice steady. "We can't let the pressures of life drown us. We need to lift each other up." Ashley nodded, her eyes brightening. "You're right. We can't let this onion, or anything else, Defeat us. We're stronger together. With newfound determination, Caitlin picked up the knife once more, her friends watching her with a mix of hope and trepidation. She took a deep breath, focusing on the onion before her. "Let's do this together," she said, her voice firm. As she sliced through the onion, the tears began to flow again, but this time they felt different. They were no longer a symbol of defeat but a release, a cleansing of the emotions they had been holding inside. One by one, her friends joined her at the cutting board, each taking a turn to slice the onion, their laughter mingling with their tears. The kitchen transformed from a chaotic storm into a sanctuary of shared vulnerability. They shared stories, confessions, and laughter, the weight of their burdens lightening with each slice. The puddle of tears on the floor became a testament to their strength, a reminder that they could face anything together. As they finished chopping the onion, Caitlin looked around at her friends, her heart swelling with pride. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We faced our fears and came out stronger." But just as the atmosphere began to shift, a loud crash echoed from the living room, shattering their moment of triumph. The sound of glass shattering sent a jolt of panic through Caitlin's chest. "What was that?" she shouted. Chapter 7. Paige's last-ditch effort now. It was Paige's turn. She stood at the edge of the kitchen, her heart racing as she watched her friends flounder in their watery predicament. The once cozy space felt like a scene from a surreal nightmare, the floor transformed into a shallow lake of tears, reflecting the flickering light above. The laughter that had filled the air was now replaced by sobs, and the camaraderie that had brought them together felt fragile, like the delicate skin of the onion they were trying to conquer. Taking a deep breath, Paige stepped forward, her resolve hardening. She had always been the one to rally her friends, the glue that held their group together. But this time, the stakes felt higher. If she failed, they would be trapped in this emotional flood, drowning in their own tears. She could feel the weight of their gazes on her, a mix of hope and desperation. "Okay, guys," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I've got this. Just trust me." As she approached the cutting board, the onion seemed to swell in size, its layers glistening under the kitchen lights. The knife felt heavy in her hand, a symbol of the challenge ahead. She could hear the soft splashes of tears hitting the floor, the sound mixing with the bubbling soup on the stove. It was a reminder of the stakes, a reminder that they were all in this together. With a swift motion, Paige brought the knife down, slicing through the onion's tough exterior. The sharp scent hit her like a wave, and she felt the familiar sting in her eyes. But she was determined not to let it overwhelm her. She focused on the task at hand, the rhythm of the knife against the cutting board, the sound of her friends' breaths behind her. "Come on, Paige," Liv whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising tide of emotions. "You can do it." But as Paige continued to cut, the tears began to flow, hot and unrelenting. They streamed down her cheeks, mingling with the tears of her friends, creating a torrent that surged around her ankles. The kitchen felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing in with the weight of their collective sorrow. "Guys, we need to do something," Ashley shouted, her voice tinged with panic. "We can't just keep crying." Caitlin, still sniffling from her earlier attempt, nodded vigorously. "What if we try to distract ourselves? Like, think of something happy." "Happy thoughts," Brad scoffed, his voice thick with emotion. "How are we supposed to think of anything happy when we're drowning in our own tears?" Paige felt a surge of frustration. She didn't want to drown. She wanted to rise above this. No, listen, she said, her voice rising above the chaos. We can't let this onion win. We're stronger than this. With renewed determination, she focused on the onion, slicing through it with a newfound vigor. The tears continued to flow, but she pushed through, channeling her emotions into each cut. The others watched, a mix of awe and concern etched on their faces. Paige, you're amazing, Mary-Kate exclaimed, her voice cracking. Just keep going. But as Paige cut deeper into the onion, the tears only intensified, cascading down like a waterfall. The kitchen was now a veritable ocean, the water lapping at their knees, threatening to pull them under. The laughter and joy they had shared earlier felt like a distant memory, replaced by the weight of their emotions. Paige, stop, Liv shouted, her eyes wide with fear. You're making it worse. But Paige couldn't stop. She was on the brink of something, a breakthrough that felt just within reach. She could feel the energy in the room shifting, the tension building as her friends watched her struggle. It was as if they were all holding their breath, waiting for her to either sink or swim. Just a little more, she murmured to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. I can do this. With one final slice, she cut through the last layer of the onion, and the floodgates opened. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they felt different. They were no longer just tears of despair. They were tears of release, a cathartic outpouring of everything she had held inside. The kitchen, once filled with panic, now felt electric with emotion. Paige, Caitlin cried, her voice a mix of admiration and concern. You did it. But as the last of the onion fell away, the kitchen erupted into chaos. The tears that had pooled around their feet surged forward, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to sweep them all away. The friends clung to each other, their laughter mingling with sobs as they realized they had all been holding back, each one of them fighting their own battles beneath the surface. Okay, Brad shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. We need to get out of here. Where? Ashley asked, her eyes wide with panic. We can't just leave. Let's go outside, Liv suggested, her voice rising above the chaos. We can wash it all away. With a collective nod, they turned and rushed toward the door, the tears still flowing but now feeling lighter, almost freeing. As they burst into the cool night air, the stars twinkled above them, a stark contrast to the emotional storm they had just weathered. Paige took a deep breath, the fresh air filling her lungs and washing away the remnants of their earlier turmoil. She looked around at her friends, their faces illuminated by the moonlight, and felt a sense of relief wash over her. See, she said, a smile breaking through her tears. We made it. But as they stood together, catching their breath and sharing nervous laughter, Paige couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The onion had been a catalyst, a symbol of the deeper issues they all faced. And while they had conquered it together, she knew that the real battles lay ahead. Hey, she said, her voice steadying as she looked at each of her friends. We need to talk about what just happened. There's more going on here than just an onion. As the laughter faded and the weight of her words settled in, Paige felt the tension in the air shift once more. The night was far from over. Chapter 8. The group's decision. As the last of Paige's sobs echoed off the walls, the group exchanged frantic glances, their hearts racing in unison. The puddle had transformed into a small lake, and the realization of their predicament began to sink in. They were not just battling an onion. They were wrestling with their own vulnerabilities, fears, and unspoken truths. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, Brad said, his voice thick with emotion as he wiped his tear-streaked face with the back of his hand. We can't keep doing this. We need to figure something out. Maybe we should just stop cutting it. Liv suggested, her voice trembling as she glanced at the onion, now a sinister figure in the center of the kitchen. I mean, it is clearly not working. No, Caitlin exclaimed, her eyes wide with panic. We can't just give up. We started this together, and we need to finish it together. It's just an onion. But look at us, Ashley cried, gesturing to the watery chaos around them. We're literally drowning in our own tears. This isn't normal. Mary Kate, who had been silent for a moment, finally spoke up, her voice soft yet firm. What if we try cutting it together? Maybe if we all did it at once, we can share the burden. It might help. The group fell silent, contemplating her suggestion. The idea of teamwork felt both comforting and terrifying. They were all in this together, yet the thought of facing the onion again, this time as a united front, sent a shiver down their spines. All right, Brad said, taking a deep breath. Let's do it. On three. They gathered around the cutting board, the onion sitting ominously in the center, its layers glistening under the kitchen lights. Each friend took a knife, their hands trembling slightly as they positioned themselves around the onion. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that hung like a storm cloud overhead. 1, 2, 3, Brad shouted, and they all plunged their knives into the onion simultaneously. The moment the blades met the flesh, a wave of pungent aroma filled the air, sharper and more intense than before. Instantly, tears erupted from their eyes, cascading down their cheeks like a waterfall. The kitchen transformed into a whirlpool of emotions, the sound of their sobs mingling with the rhythmic chopping of the onion. I can't see, Liv cried, her vision blurred by tears. I can't. Just keep going, Caitlin urged, her voice strained. We can do this. But as they continued to slice, the tears flowed uncontrollably, pooling around their feet and rising higher. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of friendship and laughter, now felt like a sinking ship, and panic began to grip them. Stop, stop, Ashley shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. We're going to drown. They all froze, knives hovering above the onion, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The reality of their situation crashed over them like a wave, and for a moment, they were all silent, staring at one another through tear-filled eyes. Maybe we need to talk, Mary Kate suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. About what's really going on. The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Each friend exchanged glances, the weight of their emotions pressing down on them like the water around their ankles. They had come together for a simple cooking night, yet here they were, standing in a pool of tears, facing the depths of their own vulnerabilities. I think we should, Brad finally said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. We've been avoiding it for too long. We need to be honest with each other. Caitlin nodded, her expression serious. I've been feeling so overwhelmed lately. It's like I'm carrying this weight, and I don't know how to let it go. I thought I was the only one, Liv admitted, her voice cracking. I've been struggling with my own stuff, and I didn't want to burden anyone. Ashley stepped forward, her eyes glistening. I've been pretending everything is fine, but it is not. I feel like I'm losing control, and I don't know how to fix it. Paige, who had been quiet until now, took a deep breath. I've been scared to share my feelings. I thought if I kept it all in, it would just go away. But it hasn't. The honesty in the room was palpable, and the tears that had once felt like a burden now seemed to wash away the barriers they had built around themselves. They were no longer just friends. They were a support system, a lifeline in the storm of their emotions. "Let's do this together," Brad said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't let this onion, or anything else, tear us apart. We need to face our fears, together." With renewed resolve, they each took a step closer to the cutting board, their knives poised once more. This time, however, they weren't just cutting an onion. They were slicing through the layers of their own hearts, ready to confront the truths that lay beneath. As they resumed chopping, the tears continued to flow, but this time they felt different. They were no longer tears of despair. They were tears of release, of catharsis. The kitchen filled with the sound of their laughter mingling with their sobs, a beautiful chaos that echoed off the walls. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Liv said, a smile breaking through her tears. "Who knew an onion could bring us together like this?" "Right," Caitlin chuckled, wiping her eyes. "Next time, let's just stick to something less emotional, like pasta." The laughter that followed was infectious, a balm for their souls. They were still standing in a pool of tears, but it felt less like a drowning and more like a cleansing. They were united in their vulnerability, and for the first time in a long while, they felt free. As they finished cutting the onion, the kitchen was filled with a sense of accomplishment. They had faced their fears, confronted their emotions, and emerged stronger together. The water around their feet began to recede, and the atmosphere shifted from one of panic to one of hope. "Now what?" Ashley asked, glancing at the pot on the stove. Chapter 9 Preparing for the worst. Now, as they huddled together, the tears lapping at their necks, the friends embraced one another, a fragile circle of solidarity amidst the chaos. The air was thick with the pungent scent of onion and salt, the latter coming from their own tears. It was a moment that felt both absurd and profound, a testament to their bond forged through laughter, shared secrets, and now, this unexpected emotional deluge. "Remember that time we tried to bake a cake for Ashley's birthday?" Liv's voice trembled, breaking the silence. "We ended up with a kitchen full of flour and a cake that looked like a pancake." Ashley chuckled, her laughter mingling with a fresh wave of tears. "And we still ate it. I think we were too scared to admit how bad it was." Caitlin, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, added, "Or the time we went camping and forgot the tent. We ended up sleeping under the stars, and it rained all night. I thought we'd drown." "Yeah, but we made the best of it," Paige said, her voice steady despite the rising tide. "We built a makeshift shelter out of branches and laughed until we cried. Just like now." Mary Kate squeezed Brad's hand, her grip firm. "We've always been there for each other, through the good and the bad. This is just another chapter in our story." As they shared these memories, the weight of their emotions began to shift. The laughter, though tinged with tears, created a buoyancy that lifted their spirits. They were not just drowning in sorrow. They were also buoyed by the love and camaraderie that had brought them together in the first place. But as the water continued to rise, a sense of urgency crept in. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of warmth and friendship, now felt like a trap. The walls seemed to close in, and the sound of their laughter echoed hollowly against the tiles. "What if we can't get out of here?" Ashley's voice quivered, a hint of panic threading through her words. "What if we're stuck?" "Don't say that," Liv shot back, her eyes wide with fear. "We can't just give up. We have to figure something out." Brad, feeling the weight of their collective anxiety, took a deep breath. "Okay, let's think. We're all in this together. We've faced challenges before, and we can face this one too. Caitlin nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. What if we try to drain the tears? We could use something to soak them up. Like what? Paige asked, glancing around the kitchen as if expecting a miracle to appear. We don't have anything here. Mary Kate's eyes lit up with an idea. The towels. We can use the kitchen towels to soak up the tears. It might not get rid of all of it, but it could help. Great idea, Brad exclaimed, his voice rising with renewed hope. Let's grab the towels and see what we can do. As they moved, the water sloshed around them, creating a rhythmic sound that echoed their urgency. They reached for the towels hanging on the oven door, their fingers fumbling as they tried to wring out the fabric and soak up the tears pooling around them. Come on, everyone. We can do this. Liv encouraged, her voice rising above the chaos. We're a team. With each towel they wrung out, the water level began to recede, albeit slowly. The friends worked in unison, their movements synchronized as they passed the damp towels from one to another, laughter mingling with their determination. But as they toiled, the emotional weight of the moment pressed down on them. Each towel soaked not just with tears but with the unspoken fears and insecurities they had carried for so long. Do you ever feel like we're just pretending everything is okay? Caitlin asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Like we're all just waiting for the other shoe to drop. The question hung in the air, heavy and charged. The laughter faded, replaced by a palpable tension. I do, Ashley admitted, her voice trembling. Sometimes I feel like I'm just one big mess, and I'm scared that one day, everyone will see it. Same, Liv said, her eyes glistening. I feel like I'm always trying to keep it together, but inside, I'm falling apart. Brad's heart ached at their confessions. He had always seen himself as the strong one, the one who held everyone together. But now, he felt the cracks in his own facade. I think we all have our struggles, he said softly. I've been feeling lost too, like I'm not living up to what everyone expects of me. Mary Kate stepped closer, her eyes searching his. You don't have to be perfect, Brad. None of us do. We're here for each other, remember. The sincerity in her voice struck a chord within him. You're right. I guess I just want to be someone you can all rely on. You are, Paige reassured him, her voice steady. But we need to be honest with each other. We can't keep pretending everything is fine when it is not. As they stood there, the water still rising but their spirits lifting, they began to share their fears and insecurities openly. Each confession was a small release, a way to lighten the emotional load they had been carrying. I'm scared of failing, Caitlin admitted, her voice trembling. I feel like I'm always trying to prove myself, but what if I can't? I'm scared of being alone, Ashley confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to lose any of you. I'm scared of change, Liv said, her eyes glistening. What if we grow apart as we get older? Brad felt a lump form in his throat. I'm scared of losing this, he said, gesturing to the group. This friendship means everything to me. In that moment, the tears that had once felt like a burden transformed into a shared experience, a testament to their vulnerability and strength. They were no longer just friends. They were a family, bound by their struggles and their love for one another. As the water began to recede, they felt a sense of relief wash over them. They had faced their fears together, and in doing so, they had fortified their bond. But just as they began to breathe. Chapter 10 The Unexpected Twist Chapter 10 The Unexpected Twist. The kitchen was a scene of chaos, a surreal blend of laughter and tears, as the friends stood shoulder to shoulder in a puddle that had transformed into a small lake. Just moments before, they had been engulfed in a wave of emotions, each cut of the onion releasing not just its pungent aroma but also a torrent of tears that seemed to flow endlessly. Brad, Mary-Kate, Liv, Ashley, Caitlin, and Paige had tried to tackle the onion one by one, but each attempt only deepened their predicament. They had huddled together, sharing memories and fears, bracing for the worst as the salty water lapped at their chins. But just as despair threatened to drown them, a sudden burst of laughter erupted from Brad, breaking through the tension like a ray of sunlight piercing through dark clouds. It was a sound so unexpected, so genuine, that it caught everyone off guard. His laughter rang out, a rich, hearty sound that echoed off the kitchen walls, mingling with the scent of onions and the salty tang of tears. "What's so funny?" Mary-Kate asked, her voice still thick with emotion, but a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Brad wiped his eyes, still chuckling. "I just realized we're literally swimming in our own tears. We're a bunch of grown adults, and we can't even handle an onion." The absurdity of the situation hit them all at once. Liv snorted, and soon, the sound of her laughter joined Brad's, a sweet melody that began to weave through the air. Ashley, unable to resist, chimed in, her laughter bubbling up like a fizzy drink. Caitlin and Paige exchanged glances, their eyes wide with disbelief, before they too succumbed to the infectious joy that had suddenly filled the room. Okay, let's be real," Caitlin said, her laughter punctuated by snorts. "We're going to need a lifeboat if we keep this up." The laughter cascaded around the kitchen, washing away the heaviness that had settled in their hearts. With each giggle, the tension that had gripped them began to dissolve, and the tears that had once flowed so freely started to slow. It was as if the laughter had cast a spell, transforming their fears into something lighter, something they could share and laugh about together. As the giggles subsided, they noticed something remarkable. The kitchen, which had felt like an ocean just moments before, was beginning to drain. The puddle that had threatened to engulf them was receding, leaving behind only a damp floor and the remnants of their shared experience. "Look," Paige exclaimed, pointing at the floor. "It's actually going down. Maybe we should have tried this sooner," Liv said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Who knew laughter was the secret ingredient? "Next time, we'll just skip the onion and go straight for the comedy," Ashley joked, her voice still tinged with laughter. As they stood together, the atmosphere shifted from one of panic to one of camaraderie. They exchanged glances, their eyes sparkling with the remnants of laughter and the warmth of shared vulnerability. It was a moment of connection, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming emotions, they could find solace in each other. "Okay, so what's next?" Brad asked, his voice steady now, the remnants of laughter still dancing in his tone. "Do we actually want to finish this soup, or should we just order pizza?" "I vote for pizza," Caitlin said, her stomach rumbling in agreement. "I'm not sure I can look at another onion for a while." "Pizza it is," Mary-Kate declared, her eyes brightening at the thought. "But first, let's clean up this mess." As they began to tidy up, the atmosphere remained light. They joked about their earlier panic, recounting the moments when each of them had succumbed to tears. The kitchen, once a battleground of emotions, was now filled with laughter and the sounds of friendship. "Remember when Liv tried to cut the onion and ended up sobbing like a baby?" Ashley teased, nudging Liv playfully. "Hey, I was just trying to save us." Liv shot back, her laughter mingling with mock indignation. "And it is not my fault the onion was out for revenge." As they cleaned, the camaraderie deepened, and the bonds of friendship felt stronger than ever. They shared stories, reminiscing about their past adventures, the laughter echoing off the walls like a warm embrace. Each memory shared was a thread woven into the fabric of their friendship, a reminder of the strength they found in one another. But as they finished cleaning up, a sudden thought struck Mary-Kate. She paused, her hands stilling as she looked around at her friends. "You know, this whole experience made me realize something." "What's that?" Caitlin asked, her curiosity piqued. Mary-Kate took a deep breath, her expression turning serious. "We've been through a lot together, and sometimes I think we forget to talk about the hard stuff. We laugh and joke, but we also need to be there for each other when things get tough." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling in. Each friend exchanged glances, the laughter fading as they contemplated the truth in Mary-Kate's statement. It was a reminder that beneath the surface of their friendship lay deeper emotions, unspoken fears, and vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed. "I think you're right," Brad said finally, his voice thoughtful. "We've all been dealing with our own stuff, and it is easy to hide behind laughter. But we need to support each other, not just in the good times." "I've been feeling overwhelmed with work lately," Ashley admitted, her voice softening. "I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to bring everyone down." "Same here," Liv chimed in. "I've been struggling with some personal issues, and I didn't know how to talk about it." Caitlin nodded, her expression serious. "I think we all have things we're dealing with. It's okay to be vulnerable with each other. That's what friends are for, right?" The conversation shifted, the laughter replaced by a deeper connection as they opened up about their struggles. Each confession was met with understanding and support, the bonds of friendship growing stronger with each shared vulnerability. As the evening wore on, they found themselves sitting together in a circle, the remnants of their earlier chaos forgotten. The kitchen, once a place of tears, had transformed into a sanctuary of understanding and acceptance. But just as they began to feel a sense of resolution, a sudden knock at the door interrupted their moment. The sound echoed through the kitchen, sharp and unexpected, pulling them from their heartfelt confessions.